Hi.
Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook. Y'all, today I am doing another trope specific book recommendation video for you. Today we are focusing on books that surround or involve in some way the fake dating trope. This is seriously one of my favorite tropes of all time. I know so many of you feel the same as well. Just something about it. So many books involve it, but it's just, they're all different. Even though it's like the same trope, there's so many different ways that you can spin it, so many different situations that can include it. And something about it just makes me so freaking giddy because every single time you reach a point where it's like, what's real, what's not, it's all about the little stuff. All of the little stuff makes a huge difference in this trope, just like the longing looks across the room, a little brush of the hand on the shoulder. Like it's just, it's so good every single time. But yes, because this is one of my favorite tropes, I have so many books that I want to talk about that involve it. So this is definitely going to be a two-part video. I have 8 books to talk to you guys about today. So I'm just gonna get right into it. We're gonna fly through these and it's gonna be a good time. So I think the first book that I wanna talk about is actually one that I have not talked about at all on this channel because I actually just finished reading it a few days ago. It's been so talked about and I completely understand why now. It's Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the first book in the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series. So basically this story follows this girl named Lily and this guy named Lo. They both come from super wealthy families that are pretty much just like massive billionaire business people. They're kind of like socialites in a way. Lily's family is the Calloway family, and they are essentially like the owners of Pepsi in this story. They own this brand called like Fizz. It's a massive like soda conglomerate, whatever. They make the big bucks. They're very well known. And Lo's family basically owns the equivalent of like Johnson & Johnson. They sell like toiletries and just lots of like household products. Either way, they're both absolutely loaded. And they've grown up knowing each other their entire lives really. And Lo and Lily have always been really, really close, really good friends. And something that they kind of figured out throughout their friendship as they got closer and as they each matured is they both suffer from their own separate addictions. Lo is an absolute alcoholic. He's completely addicted to alcohol. He has to have it every single day to function. And Lily is actually addicted to sex. And that might sound very like scandalous and spicy, but it's honestly really sad getting inside of her head in this story and seeing like what she goes through every single day. And once Lily and Lo kind of come to this realization when they're in their young teen years, they kind of get the genius idea that both of them have these addictions, but neither one of them really have the desire to stop them. And the best way that they can combat this and keep it from their families and go on doing what they're doing is to pretend to date each other. So at the start of this story, which is really interesting because I feel like most fake dating stories, you are there for the beginning of like the deal of them agreeing to fake date each other. In this story, Lily and Lo have already been dating for 3 years. Like as far as their families know, they are together, they live together, they have a 2-bedroom apartment, and people think one of the rooms is a guest room, but in reality, they don't sleep in the same rooms. And they basically help each other out. Lily will drive Lo to a club. He'll get his fix of drinking and she'll get her fix of whatever she needs, and they go home, and at the end of the day, they're best friends, and this arrangement has worked out for them really well for a really long time. But you can tell at the start of the story that there's always been some underlying tension there. There was one time that Lily and Lo did hook up with each other, but because Lily cares so much for Lo, she's like never wants that to happen again. He's not just one of her daily conquests she has to go through. But you can tell there's been some long building tension between the two of them. It's really, the story sounds a little crazy, but it's really kind of beautiful seeing how much these two care about each other, how they're really the only 2 people in the world that know and understand the other person, and kind of figuring out a way to fight and work with these addictions together and help one another out. It's really so good. Like, this is such an interesting concept that I don't even know how they came up with, but this book is so freaking good, and I'm so excited to continue the series and see more of the other characters' stories, but absolutely recommend Addicted to You. That's a good one. So the next book I want to talk about is The Ex Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I still don't understand why more people haven't talked about this book because it was seriously So good. Basically, this story follows a girl named Shay. I had to take a peep at the back cover because I honestly forgot for half a second. Shay has worked in public radio for about 10 years. It's always been her dream growing up to work in public radio, but she knows she doesn't have a radio voice, so she's always just done behind the scenes stuff. And at the start of this story, we're introduced to Dominic. He is this new sort of hotshot that has started working at her radio station. He's straight out of grad school, and he's a few years younger than Shay, but he comes in like he owns the place, just absolutely takes over, and she cannot stand him. They bicker like crazy, and pretty much what happens in the beginning of this is there's a big meeting with the entire radio station where the head of the station lets them know that ratings are seriously down and they need to come up with a new show to, you know, gain some interest. And somebody makes a suggestion of them doing a show about dating, and they're kind of like, it's been done before. And somebody pipes up and says, what about a show about dating hosted by a couple? And again, they're like, been done. And so Shay kind of ends up mumbling under her breath, what about a dating show hosted by exes? And everyone's instantly like, what? That's a really good idea. I'm interested, tell me more. Everybody except for Dominic. He is not about it. He went to school to be a journalist. He's about reporting the real news, and he's like, that's a waste of radio. That's a waste of airtime. Why would we talk about that? It doesn't add any value to society. They end up getting in this huge like public fight basically in front of like the whole station, completely going at each other. And afterwards, the head of the station ends up calling them both into their office, and Shay totally thinks they're like in trouble, about to get fired. But instead he says, Shay, I love your idea of the dating show hosted by exes. We're gonna do it. And she's like, oh my God, fantastic. He said, yep, except you and Dominic are gonna be the exes. And obviously they're like, what do you mean? We never dated. And also we hate each other. And the station manager's like, well, you could have fooled me and everyone else in there today. You definitely bicker like your exes. You're gonna do this show. You pretty much have no choice because like I said, we're cutting funding and you're probably gonna be out of a job if you don't do it. So lots of back and forth, but obviously, as you can tell, the whole meaning of the book, they end up doing the show. It's called The X Talk, and it's so freaking good. This book reminded me a ton of The Hating Game, which is like my favorite book of all time. So if you liked that book, you would like this one a lot. A lot of similar vibes of like the workplace, office, banter, and the concept of the fake dating in this is really interesting because they're not quite fake dating. They're like pretending that they have already dated. Like they were in a relationship and now they're out of it. So it's them like putting on this show of like thinking that like pretending like they've known each other and were together, but also at the same time kind of like getting these feelings along the way. And it's like, wait, we're supposed to be exes. We can't actually like each other. It's just so good. I really liked it. It was a great little rom-com moment. So next I want to talk about To Love Jasonthorne by Ella Mays. Again, another book that I don't understand why it's not more talked about because it was just so freaking good. But pretty much this story follows this girl named Olive. At the start of the book, we are in the past and we're basically seeing where Olive for the first time is meeting her brother's best friend. Yes, fake dating and brother's best friend in one book. I know you're already intrigued, but basically Jasonthorne has just moved next door and he has quickly become Olive's older brother's best friend. And you see them the first time they meet. He's a few years older than Olive, but she's just like immediately has the biggest crush on him, is so obsessed. And we kind of see for the first few chapters, it jumps around throughout the years, but Olive always has the biggest crush on Jason. He's super sweet to her, but obviously he sees her as a little kid. He's his best friend's little sister. Nothing's going on there. And basically the past chapters at the beginning end with Olive kind of overhearing from Jason himself that he does only see her as a little kid and she's kind of clingy, but whatever, she's nice. Basically just confirming what she hoped was not true, that he's just not gonna see her that way. He just sees her as his best friend's little sister, and it completely shatters her when she hears it straight from Jason. Like she has been in love with him for so many years and it's like it tears her heart out. And right about the same time this happens, Jason ends up finding out tragic news and he has to move across the country now to live with his dad in LA. And him and Olive kind of go their separate ways there and they don't hear from each other for many years. Jason, shortly after going to LA, ends up getting into acting and ends up becoming like one of the most famous actors in Hollywood in the country, becomes like kind of a hotshot celebrity. At the same time, Olive has grown up and she's gone to college now, and in college she actually ended up writing a book, and publishing it, and it ended up being a huge success itself. The kicker of the whole thing is her inspiration for the book was literally Jason. She pretty much writes the story of them, but with her own happy ending of them ending up together. Nobody really knows because she obviously uses different names, but the story is totally about them. And now, present day, we're seeing Olive, again, I think she's like a senior in college now, and she's been approached by a movie company and they want to make her book into a movie. And you'll never guess who they have in mind to play the lead role in her story. None other than Mr. Jasonthorne. Such an interesting concept, so freaking cool, but obviously you have that whole moment of like a reunion where Jason's like, oh my God, Olive, is that you? I didn't even recognize you. You're all grown up. Like, not quite seeing her as a little kid anymore. At the same time that's going on, Jason is also having issues in general with his management because he just has a really bad reputation of being a womanizer, and they pretty much tell Jason that they need him to get it together if he wants to keep getting movie roles and not getting dropped from things. He needs to show that, you know, he's a stand-up guy and he can be in a committed relationship. And the best way for him to do that is he needs to get married. Get married for a couple years, let people see that he's able to be committed and settled down, and then from there he should be fine to kind of go about his life. And because him and Olive have been spending so much time together and people know that he's in this new movie, his agents pretty much feel like the perfect person to play this role would be this girl that he's known his whole life. It'd make a very cutesy little story for them to get in this relationship together. So lots of things going on in this book. Such a freaking interesting concept. It's just really cute, really spicy. Just, it's a great time. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the Off-Campus series. The Off-Campus series is a series of companion novels that are hockey romances. It basically follows these 4 different guys that live together in this house at Briar University. They are all on the hockey team together. So each book in the story follows a different guy and a different girl and like their relationship. I'm just gonna say before I even get into this, the guy in this book is in my top 3 book boyfriends of all time. Probably my second favorite book boyfriend to ever exist. He's just, but yes, this story follows this girl named Hannah and this guy named Garrett. Garrett, like I said, is on the hockey team at Briar University. He's like the absolute star of the hockey team. I think he's even the captain. They are in the same class together at school, and Garrett at the start of the story gets back a test and he has absolutely bombed it, along with literally everybody in the class except for this girl, Hannah. And Garrett cannot fail this class because he obviously needs to stay on the hockey team and he will not be able to play if he's not passing. So when he sees that Hannah has passed this test, he tries to convince her to tutor him, and Hannah is not about it. She's super busy. She is a drama student. She works, like she doesn't have extra time to tutor this guy that she doesn't even know. But Garrett is very persistent. He will not let it go. He ends up following her around for like weeks trying to get her to tutor him, and eventually he ends up seeing Hannah making eyes at this other guy that she has a massive crush on. He is on the football team, I think, at Briar U, and Garrett hatches this amazing idea that he knows exactly what he can say to get Hannah to tutor him. And he offers to make a deal with her that he will fake date her if she tutors him, and that way they can both get what they want, because if this guy sees Hannah with Garrett, who is literally like the most popular guy at school, the most eligible bachelor, it'll make him notice her. Hannah's a very quiet girl. She's very reserved. She's not very out there, and anyone that dates Garrett Graham, people are gonna talk about and are gonna know who it is. So Garrett basically offers to fake date Hannah in exchange for her tutoring him for this test. So obviously, again, fake dating trope. They don't like each other in the beginning. They fake date. We start to wonder what's real, what's not. She's over here trying to impress this other guy, and Garrett's down for it in the beginning, but then he starts to get a little possessive and doesn't know how he feels about the situation. This is like the easiest book to read that I think I've ever read. I flew through it so fast. It's just so addicting. It's so good. The guy in it, like I said, love him in this, but like throughout the series just gets better and better, and it's just, ugh. Okay, the next 2 books that I'm gonna talk about, I think were like the 2 most read and talked about books in this last year. So you've probably already heard of them, but I literally can't not mention them in this video because they kind of own this trope at this point. Like, they truly do. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. Like, we gotta talk about Erin Blackford. We simply have to. This story follows this girl named Lena. She is originally from Spain, but now lives in New York. She works at this engineering firm, and at the start of this book, we learn that her sister is now getting married, and she has to go to this wedding back in Spain. But she's not really dying to go because she really needs a plus one. She needs someone to go with her because her ex-boyfriend is gonna be there. He's in the wedding party. They have bad history. Just in general too, she feels like she needs a buffer between her family. And she's even gone as far as to tell her family that she's coming and she's bringing her new boyfriend. That doesn't exist. So Lena is talking about this in her office with her good friend and is explaining her situation when she hears a voice speak up and offer to go with her to this wedding. She turns around to see it as none other than her absolute work nemesis, Erin Blackford. Much again like the hating game, much like the X-Talk, Erin and Lena cannot stand each other. They work very similar roles, but from the beginning they have never gotten along. She cannot stand him. He's just, they're polar opposites. He's very like straight-laced, you know, just has his stuff like sew together, doesn't have any type of sense of humor, where Lena's kind of like all over the place, free spirit, works very hard, is also very smart, but just they're not the most compatible, is my point. So obviously when Erin offers to go with her to this wedding, Lena's like, over my dead body, but they end up working out a deal where she's gonna do something for him, he'll do something for her, and she really is desperate, so she's not about to turn down this favor because she seriously cannot go to this wedding by herself. So he goes with her to this wedding, to Spain. We get to see them travel to Spain together. We get to see him pretend to be her boyfriend in front of her entire family and do way too good of a job at it. Again, all the subtle touches, the longing glances. There's a couple of scenes in this that are just so many other tropes that I don't want to say because it'll kind of spoil it, but tropes we all love. This was a great one. Seriously, if you haven't read this yet, go ahead. And the next one, this seriously was one of my favorite books I read last year, one of my current just favorite books in general. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book is just so good. It also follows a girl named Olive. Olive is such a common name in romance books. I don't know why, it's very strange. But she basically works in the biology department in Stanford, and she is a PhD student right now. So Olive's situation in the start of the story is very interesting, just in general, but also interesting to try to explain. Basically, she has just gotten out of a very short relationship that she was in. She was going out with this guy for, I don't know, a handful of months, and they were fine, but it wasn't like explosions and fireworks. It wasn't love. They didn't vibe like super well, but they were just hanging out. But she did notice that he did vibe very well with her best friend, An. And basically they've broken up, and Olive knows that An is interested in him. She knows that he's interested in An, but obviously An, being a good friend to Olive, girl code, doesn't want to go and try to date Olive's ex. And Olive is trying to encourage An, like, absolutely go date him, seriously, it doesn't bother me. I wasn't that into him, like, go for it. But she won't do it. So Olive, basically to convince An, tells her that it really doesn't matter because Olive is already in a new relationship. She even has a date tonight, so go for it. Go out with him, be with him, it's totally fine. And so An's like, okay, like, really, are you sure? So what ends up happening is Olive doesn't have a date, obviously. She ends up spending her evening in the lab at school, and she ends up rounding a corner and seeing none other than An coming down the hallway. So she absolutely panics, turns around, grabs the first man she sees, and asks if she can kiss him, and he's like, what? And she kisses him. Whenever she pulls away, she sees that it is none other than Dr. Adam Carlson. He is notorious within the biology department. He's very well known and well praised because he's an absolute genius, but he's also more known for being an absolute jerk. Everyone hates being in his classes. He's just a total hard ass because he is a genius, and he has super high expectations, and he makes people cry. He's just known for being like the jerk of the department. And she kind of panics. It's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. They have a whole funny little interaction, but basically An sees this happen, and she's like, you're dating Adam Carlson, that's who you're on a date with. And Olive doesn't really know what to say because she, again, wants on to think it's okay for her to go date her ex. So word ends up spreading very quickly within the department that they're together, and Olive ends up going back to Adam and is like, I don't know what to do. And it turns out that it is honestly beneficial for both of them to just continue this ruse and let people think that they're fake dating, because again, Olive needs this for the sake of her friend, but Adam is also in a bind because Stanford has been cutting his funding for his research because they think he's a flight risk. They think that he's gonna go off and work at another university, so they don't want to give him money if he's just gonna like up and leave in 5 minutes. So if Stanford thinks that Adam is in a stable relationship, then he'll be less likely to up and leave and move to another state, move to another city. So they end up keeping up this fake dating ruse between them. They agree to have like weekly coffee dates to keep it going and keep up images. And this book is so freaking good. Like, this is seriously, this is probably the best out of all these books when it comes to the fake dating trope element of the book, because it's just done so well, and there's so many moments where I was blushing like an idiot. I just love this book so much. It's so freaking cute. It's so like nerdy and fun too. I love like the setting of the lab and all of that. Adam Carlson is inspired by Adam Driver, so if you're into that, it was just so good. Okay, the next book I'm gonna be talking about is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. If you follow me on Instagram, I seriously just haven't shut up about this one recently, and I'm not sorry about it because everybody needs to read it. It's just so good. The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This is a thick one. Pretty much this story follows this girl named Vanessa. She works as the assistant to this man named Aiden Graves. He is a football player. He is like the best defensive player in the league, and everyone calls him the Wall of Winnipeg because he's from Winnipeg in Canada. But they live in Dallas now, present day. Vanessa is his assistant, like I said. She doesn't know anything about Aiden, didn't know anything about football, ended up getting this job through some listing, and she pretty much is just working for Aiden to save up some money because she plans to eventually work on her own, have a freelance graphic design business, and she's been sticking this out for a few years. She is really good at her job, especially considering that Aiden Graves is a complete jerk. He is an incredible football player, but he has no sense of personal skills. He doesn't know how to say please or thank you. He runs a very strict schedule, waking up at the crack of dawn, working out at these designated times. He needs these certain meals at these certain intervals, and Vanessa is absolutely on it, never lets him down, is there every single day, and he's never had a nice thing to say to her. He's never had much of anything to say to her, to be honest, but the time has come and Vanessa has decided that she is ready to quit. And so she ends up leaving this job. Aiden really doesn't have anything to say about it whenever she does so, and that just kind of solidifies her decision even more. But very shortly after she leaves, Aiden shows up at her doorstep and is basically begging for her to come back. He needs her as his assistant, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna come back. You've never appreciated me, and I'm doing my own thing now. I'm not gonna do it. And so several weeks go by of Aiden showing up very often, trying to get Vanessa to come back. And finally she's like, can you just tell me what's really going on? Because something has clearly been up with you. And Aiden basically reveals that his visa has expired. It's coming up, and he is kind of in between teams right now. He is like the star of his team, but he hasn't decided yet if he's gonna re-sign with them or if he's gonna move because his contract is like up. He doesn't know. So pretty much he's like not gonna be allowed to stay in the country. And Vanessa's like, I'm sorry, like that's not my problem. You should have figured that out. They end up going through several options, and she's like, why don't you just find somebody to marry you? Like, I'm sure there's a line out the freaking door. Go figure it out. And he's like, yeah, so I have thought about that. And I think you can tell where this is going. He basically admits that Vanessa is like the only person in the world that can actually put up with him, and he can tolerate her as well as he can tolerate anybody, and it would be beneficial for them both if she were to fake marry him so that he can stay in the country. She's not about it, but she has been in a lot of financial trouble for a long time, so he ends up making a deal that he'll help her pay off her student loans, get her a house, if she just agrees to be married to him for this designated amount of time so that he can get his visa in order, become a full citizen, and all of that. So you can expect, she obviously says yes, and this entire book is just the slowest of slow burns. It's what Mariana Zapata is known for, but it's so good. It's seriously my baby. Like, there are so many moments of this book that I just think back to all the time, and I'm just like, oh my God. Literally just like blushing. Aiden is just this complete teddy bear on the inside, and I love him. I love him. It totally looks like it's like it is about football, but it's like 2% about football, so do not let the cover deceive you if you're not a football person, because I most certainly am not either. This book is everything to me, and I love it so much. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is a little bit of a wild card because it fits this trope a little bit, but not perfectly. And I think once I explain my reasoning for including it, you guys will understand. But I want to give a shout out to Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This story follows the son of the president of the United States and the Prince of England. So their names are Alex and Henry. Alex is the president's son, Henry is the prince. And so Alex and Henry, for the past several years, have kind of grown up together in a way. They've had to be together at so many different like political events, and they have never gotten along with one another. Alex cannot stand Henry, and vice versa. Not about it. And what ends up happening at the start of the story is Alex and Henry end up getting in a super public fight. It's all over the news. It's a big scandal, and basically their countries are like in damage control now, and they're like, look, y'all need to get it together. People are gonna think that like America and England are gonna go to war. We can't have this. You guys need to publicly pretend to be friends. So basically their media teams, their PR people end up setting them up on these like fake friend dates. You see where I'm going with this? To try to convince the public that they're buddies and this is all just a misunderstanding. So they plan like several outings for them to go on together so they can be seen. Paparazzi can take pictures, like they'll be on the news, on TV. And Alex and Henry, even though they cannot stand each other, are not about it. They don't really have much of a choice. And as they go on these dates, at first there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of bickering, but slowly they start to realize they have a lot more in common than they originally knew. They really get to know each other. They kind of start to bond. They form a friendship, and then kind of slowly form a little bit more than that. A lot more than that, honestly. And it's a big oh crap realization once they kind of realize what's between them two, because obviously they're over here faking having a friendship when everyone thinks they hated each other, but now they kind of don't hate each other at all, polar opposite of that. And obviously this is a big scandal because they are again very public figures from separate countries, and they're both men, and it's just a very tough situation. But this book is complete freaking butterflies and rainbows. I still think about this book so often. I read it really early last year, and it's just so freaking cute. It is not quite fake dating, like I said, because it's really like fake dating friendship, but still it's got the same kind of vibes. If you like a fake dating moment, you'll like this. I just thought I'd throw it in there because it's a little bit different from the other things we've talked about. But yes, guys, that is all the books that I'm going to talk about today. That should be a good place to get you started until I come around with another video. I have a lot more to talk about, but I also have a lot more books that I know have this trope that I have not read yet that I'd like to give a try and see if I'd like to recommend to you guys. So part 2 won't come out right away, but I promise it will be coming. I have other tropes coming as well. These videos are always super fun to film, and you guys seem to like them. I love making them, but yeah. That is it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!